Now we are into a tool mode. We are trying to establish saying the fact that we have identified the requirements to build a data warehouse. We have a model now. We have a target. We have a source. All we are trying to do is we are picky about a tool and trying to design or implement the solution, moving the data from source to target. So in that you are going to play a role of developer. A developer play area is designer. So you're going to write your business logic, define your source, target, everything in designer. After you define that, how do you run a job? You can run this job and make the data load from source to target using the designer itself, or the other way is you can kick off the job from the administrator. Administrator and central management console both are like the same terminology, or they are synonyms. Whether you call administrator or central management console, it is the same. Who is going to actually set permissions at job level, or he will give you permissions at permissions as admin, or he can make it just as a developer, and he can actually restrict you from accessing few components of business objects data services. So that is the role of administrator. Now let us try to look very closely into the right hand side popped up a diagram. I'm talking about this area. If you, I don't know if it has, oh sorry, when I touch it, it is not actually. Okay, I'm talking about the right hand side, the right hand corner where it says local repository, central repository, production repository, test repository, local repository 3, local repository 2. I mean, it has 3 local repositories which are connected to the central repository, and below it has a production repository and a test repository. Everything is connected to one and one single repository. Here actually, first when you start working with the tool, the first question you will have, do I need to have one central repository or more than one is permitted? Because in the distributed architecture, it is showing as central repository one thing, and there are more than one local repository. And you do have the production repository and test repository sitting on the other side. So you have all this. You will have to understand local repository is the developer's play area. You can design, you can run a job, you can schedule a job, or whatever you want it to do. It is from designer, you can do plenty of it. I mean, you can't schedule a job, you can do it only from the web administrator, but you can design a job, you can run a job and see the statistics, you can debug a job, you can do definitely everything what a designer or what a developer can do from the local repository only. Central repository, central repository is a place where it will have, it will be for the multi-user environment. It is the common place like your cafeteria where you can interact with each other and share your coffee or and a meal. That's what is a central repository. But you cannot definitely write a job, or define a data flow, or define an object function in central repository. It is just a storage place. You cannot do anything there. You can only use it as a refrigerator kind of thing, but you cannot cook anything there. Whereas the other side, production repository and test repository, those are required when you move a job from your development environment into a test environment for QA people, and followed by the production environment, which is the actual place where the job is going to be scheduled to run. So in next few slides, we are going to talk about each and every component of it. So actually in the short demonstration about the SAP data services, if you look at it, I tried to show each and every component of designer. Sorry, I remember I did not show. Let me see what I try to show in this particular slide. I remember I tried to show what all data services can do as part of this particular presentation. Anyhow, you can. It is also available online in Training Cloud's channel. So whatever you are seeing there, it is available. So I'm going to stop this particular video, and we are going to go and see the repository. If you look at it, the definition of a local repository is more important for a developer. A local repository is used by an application designer to store definitions of objects like projects, jobs, workflows, and data flows, and source and target metadata. Now we are going to actually use the original terminology of data services or data integrator. The reason is you are going to talk in the same language from now. We are going to talk about each and everything more specific to data services, because that is what the terminology which you will have to use in your interviews and going forward when you work. So it is all about what are the objects you are talking. You are talking at a high level, which is a project, or you're talking below that, which is the job, or even if you go under that, you have workflows and data flows. Some of them are hierarchical, and you do have the definition, which is the metadata about the source and target. So local repository is used by an application designer, which is a developer, to store definitions of objects. What are different objects? Projects, jobs, workflows, data flows. Any small component there is called as an object. And the source data, which is the metadata, source and target data. So that is all you have in the local repository. So what is the central repository here? A central repository is an optional component that can be used to support multi-user development. That is the purpose of central repository. It is an optional component which the data services says, but I feel like it is most required component. So if any organization you go, they are not supporting the central repository, ask them to actually build a central repository for them. Though they may come up and say, hold on guys, there is a small flickering noise and things in my happening at my end. I'm going to mute this particular machine. Okay, I think now it should be fine. So local repository and central repository. If you get into an organization and they say we don't have a central repository, ask them to configure a central repository. You'll actually know, you'll actually understand what are the benefits of a central repository. As a developer, you all have flexibility to give your own names. Like definitely, if you see, I can tell you what is the use of a central repository in a very generic purpose. Let us say we are in a data warehouse environment. As I told, we are in a single family home, and this is just only purposefully for only for humor, guys. Don't take it serious. You are a single family home, and everyone had a couple of kids. Without interacting with each other, if they start naming their own kids, you may have more than one Murali in your home. And if you call Murali, there can come like 3 or 4 people. If you call Ramba, there are more than one Rambas in your home, because you never interacted with the remaining people in the home whether they are going to name their kid as Ramba. So Ramba or Rambabu, you'll have to interact with each other and then make the name, so that there will be only one Ramba or one Rambabu in a home, so that you can easily call them and address them. That is the purpose. So central repository is the place where it is kind of the meeting point for the developers, just not to step on each other's toe. You'll have to define saying, okay, this is the naming convention I'm following. Definitely this name doesn't exist in any of the developers environment, so I can use this name. So that's certified. And central repository can also act like a place where it can store your jobs. It can do version controlling. It can help you anytime your system goes wrong, you can actually use that. Guys, are you able to hear me? Okay. So that is about the central repository. The central repository provides a shared object library, allowing developers to check objects in and out of the local repository. So all you're going to do it is kind of the stock exchange. Everyone has their own stocks. Now you want to buy some stocks or sell some stocks, you go to the stock exchange. So we can compare the central repository as a stock exchange board. It can be what we have, the Nasdaq here. I don't the Wall Street, Nasdaq, or some stock exchanges we have, right? So it is the same Bombay Stock Exchange or the Delhi Stock Exchange. Some of them you have in the same way you have the central repositories where you can exchange your jobs, and you have one component called dashboard. Dashboard will actually, what it will do is whatever you have designed in your local repository, it will just give a high level statistics about each job that you have built, and what is the start time of this particular job, from which repository it is being ran, who ran it, and what is the time I took for the execution, all those things. So it can give you in more than one pictorial form, which is it can give you as a table or a pie chart or even a graph. And then after you design your job, we have to actually document that job. So that is where you can actually use the auto documentation component. So in the auto documentation component, you have variety of chances that you can select the image, you can select the table name, you can select the variables used in it, whatnot. Everything, whatever you have did in your developer environment is accessible in the auto documentation module. So auto documentation, anyhow, we are going to see when we really do use this auto documentation, you'll see all this stuff. But I'm trying to tell you different components of the distributed environment. This is all part of the distributed environment, and whatever the components now you are seeing actually are handled by the central management console. You have this impact and lineage analysis reports are also available on the central management console. It is all totally tied to your designer. That is the reason I have put this slide even here. Whatever you have seen, this is tied to your designer. This is also tied to your designer. This is the auto documentation is at the job level, each data flow. Everything is tied to the designer, and so I'm trying to show you all this again. So administrator, here comes the important guy. You till now I told like what are the components you are using. It refers to the designer or designer module, but who will give you access to see all this? He is the administrator there. He is the doorkeeper there. Without him, you are going to mess up the entire local repository, central repository, and also your project. So administrator provides browser-based administration of SAP Business Objects Data Services resources, which include scheduling. You can schedule a job to run at night time or daytime or a weekend, whatever you want, and you can monitor a job from there, and you can execute a batch job. Anything is possible from the administrator. You can do some configuring, starting and stopping real-time services, everything from administrator. You can configure a real-time service, saying a real-time service is a little bit different from batch jobs, guys. Real-time service will work on an SMS. If you send an SMS to your access server, it can start the job. If you can send a small message, it can start the job. And it can also become more responsive, saying whenever I have a request for order, run the job. It can do that. So the administrator also helps in starting and stopping a real time service. So an administrator can help in configuring a job server, access server, and a repository usage. So the configuration can be managed from administrator. Like you can definitely allot a job server to particular user. You can say I have more than one access server. Use this particular access server for running so and so job, and he can put restrictions on the repository usage, saying he will restrict you not to use certain elements of designer, that you cannot access the central repository. Yes, he can restrict you. He can